So yeah, good morning everyone. Welcome to today's Disrupt event. I'm glad you're all here on this Friday morning. I hope you're having a great time. So before the weekend, let's have one more interesting discussion, intense discussion, hopefully, about today's topic. But before I hand over to the moderator, Philipp Sandner, and all the speakers who will introduce themselves real quick, just some logistics. If you want to ask some questions, you can join the WhatsApp group and the Telegram group link, which is in the email that you received from Eventbrite. So just click on the links. You will be joining the group, so you can post the question. And both Philipp and I, we will monitor these chats and bring up the questions if there's enough time, so that the speakers can answer there. And that way, we hope to bring some interactivity to this event. That's all for now. So I hope you enjoy this talk. And yeah, Philipp, do you want to lead the introduction?
Yes, that's perfect. Thanks, Jan. Thanks much for hosting this. We will talk about mobility today. That's basically one industrial domain, which will be digitally transformed in the future. In the past, people have purchased cars. Now we are consuming services. That's just the retail business. We are experiencing this also in the industrial sector in the future. So there will be a transformation from products to services, which is upcoming, and therefore it's quite good to talk about this topic. We have here a couple of true experts here, Bosch, Define, and a couple of others, Maria from Fetch.AI in UK. Who wants to start presenting himself and his company very briefly? Markus, would you like to start?
Yeah, maybe I can start. So my name is Markus, as Philipp already mentioned. I'm working as a manager for Define. Define is a consulting company in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and the UK. And I specifically working on blockchain topics. So in the recent 3 years, I have worked in different areas from finance, industry, also to mobility. We're in a company, we have a strong focus on financial topics, but we are seeing now that, especially in the blockchain space, that, like, for instance, payments between different economic actors getting more and more important because you have smart contracts and so on. And this is exactly the area where we are working. So we have, like, in the blockchain space, like say 3 pillars. One is about building a platform for clients. So we are helping them with like the concepts, with the business processes, with the implementation, and also with, say, the production readiness at the end of the day. We're also working in the digital asset space. So we are helping banks, for instance, building up all the necessary capital market infrastructure from custody to primary market platforms. But we're also working in tokenization, where we are building platforms for token offerings. So that's from my side.
Excellent. Thanks. Then I will propose that Peter from Bosch is basically directly continuing to present himself.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me here and inviting me to this hopefully very interesting discussion later on. Robert Bosch, as you might all know, is going more and more in the direction of the Internet of Things. So we are very, very broad, diversified these days. We have lots of automotive stuff still, and one of the biggest suppliers in this area. However, we are expanding more and more in direction of building technology, industrial technology, energy, thermotechnology, and all that stuff. So what's very important for us here really is how we're gonna approach challenges of the increasing connectivity of the future and all the challenges coming with it. And in this function, or in this role, is my main activity span at Bosch. I'm the product owner there for all the connectivity stuff and for distributed ledger technologies, formerly known partly as blockchain technologies as well. And therefore, I'm responsible for all the mobility use cases which you can see for the future. That spans from really just vehicle to infrastructure connectivity, but as well more and more into software and firmware over the air stuff, and as well autonomous driving use cases in the future. So we see here really lots of interesting, challenging as well, but a huge possibility as well. to really leave that classic automotive areas that we are in and go more and more really in this service software-driven huge new field. From my background, I'm a computer scientist with an MBA. So I think the perfect combination for DLT these days, and really that's my dream function at the moment, because before Bosch, I worked for investment banks. I worked for computer and hardware, the OEMs, and as well a lot of that stuff. But here now in this function, really looking at the business model side, looking at the technology side, which is really amazing. I'm quite looking forward today to these questions that we have for us. I'm done. You're muted somehow.
1 second, I just need to give Philipp the permission to unmute. Philipp, can you hear us? But you're muted now.
Yes, I'm muted because I could not unmute yourself.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, my mistake.
You did not unmute me myself, therefore I listened up, but I could not talk. But thanks very much. Thanks, Peter, for the quick presentation. And now we have Maria from UK, right? And you are presenting Fetch.AI, which is a startup out there since a couple of years, actually, working in the area of agents in mobility networks and so on.
Yeah, correct. So thank you very much. Thank you, DisruptNet, for hosting this interesting event and having us as well. And thank you for Philipp for the introduction. So yes, I'm Maria Minaricova, leading the business development activities at Fetch.AI. We're located in Cambridge, UK. We are a startup, but not quite young. So anyway, we've been around for 2-3 years working on the technology. What we're doing is actually combining these new interesting transformational technologies like AI, blockchain, IoT, and creating infrastructure for others to use to be able to deploy multi-agent systems. So when we talk about AI, we're not talking about the centralized AI as most people are aware of, but there's a subset of AI called agent-based systems, multi-agent systems. And these are software programs that can represent people, IoT devices, machines. They enable machine-to-machine interaction. They can represent organizations or services, so basically anything out there. And what's interesting is they are really decentralized. So there's not one entity that owns these agents. So when we say we're creating agent framework, it's really a system where these agents can communicate, they can interact, they can make contracts, and they can enter these contracts onto the blockchain. But these agents belong to individuals. So there's no one central entity governing these agents. They are interactive, they react to their environment and can adapt as well. So it's actually a really good solution for places like mobility where you have multi-stakeholders. So there's not one platform that, if you look at what's happening these days, everybody wants to have their own platform. And so we end up with having, so many parking apps in each different country where you go to, or so many train apps, so many, booking apps. So what's actually possible, the technology is here to allow these individual entities to be represented by their own agents and find the other agents and interact with them and act on behalf of their owners. And these transactions, these contracts, these value transfers are then done on a blockchain, which is basically what will enable this scalability of this system, and also it will allow not one central party to own all of this interaction, but having everybody to be independent. So you can have multi-stakeholders who are acting on their behalf, but participating together with others. So we're looking at mobility as one of the key areas because there are various, independent stakeholders in the ecosystem. But also, for example, supply chain. There's another one. What's good about this is actually the information is all provided real time. So this is one of the issues with the current systems. When you have AI, you usually develop algorithms, you deploy the systems, and then they run. But they're not adjusting to real-time changes in a situation. So if we have, like the COVID situation we had this year, or we still have, all of a sudden the traffic has stopped, but none of the traffic lights have adjusted. So ideally, you would have agents representing these traffic lights and understanding the traffic flows, communicating with the cars, communicating with other signs or other oracles. You can have data oracles represented by agents, and they can interact together and they can predict the traffic flows. They can help you adjust the road situation, the traffic signs, the light signs, and so on. So it's a dynamic system that can function in real time and really provide optimization. So that's
yeah. Thanks very much for this introduction. So we have the technology part here, we have the hardware part here, the software part, and also companies seeking to apply it. So first of all, I think what we can hear now is that this is a very, very interesting future with new business models and so on. But actually, when will this happen? What would you expect that all of you guys, what would you expect that this is basically happening? Yes, the technology is there, but still it has to be applied. Budgets are not provided yet in companies. Maybe regulation is missing. So there are a couple of points missing here. When would you expect that this really becomes a reality? Is it years or is it decades? What would you say?
If I may say, it's already happening. So we announced yesterday, actually, our trials in Munich, in Germany, parking system, where the agents represent individual parking lots. They're able to communicate together. They can see, using AI, you can see, the traffic going out of the parking lots coming in. So all these agents together actually can optimize the traffic spaces. They can communicate with your agent in your car or on your phone, and they can dynamically. So this allows dynamic pricing as well. So they're actually the different parking lots have different prices. So they are optimizing and suggesting or offering the car drivers places in a low economic value. So if there's a car park that is less used, you can choose that, and you can pay less by parking there. Maybe it's a bit further from your destination, but perhaps that's okay for you. So these trials are already happening, and also in Germany. So I think this is really exciting. And I think once these really show the decrease, this also decreases CO2 emission. This is what we all want. We want to help to optimize our traffic flows, decrease CO2 emission, allow councils to be more effective, and give drivers choices, also economic choices. So it's already happening.
What's your opinion, Peter and Marcus? When do you think that we are ready to have this in reality? Meaning that we have like a kind of broad basis of users, not just prototypes.
I think it takes a little bit long. Oh, sorry.
No, just go on.
Yeah,
I'll follow you.
Yeah, I'm thinking it takes maybe a few years. Surely it's starting right now, but there's a lot of things which have to be done first. From a technology perspective, we have different distributed ledger technologies, and they're not mature yet. We can use them to build these kind of platforms where we are connecting different kind of economic entities. But the platforms, they have to mature, and there's still a lot of technical glitches and so on, which don't make them really kind of production ready. So this is a big problem. But anyway, you have to start developing. And the other thing is, if you want to have economical interaction between different participants, including, say, machines or mobility assets on a platform, you need these payments methods. And so far, you need something like a stable currency. You don't want to have volatility into the payments. So we also need something like, say, CDBC or a digital euro for that. So there's a lot of parts which are still missing, which are still in development. So I'm thinking until we have something really, really broad and really full-fledged, it will probably take, I don't know, a few years, maybe 5 years, because I mean, there's also like regulatory issues around, so it will take some time.
Yeah, and just to continue here, to answer the easy part, it won't be decades. As Maria also already pointed out, it's already beginning, definitely. However, since we see a few of these challenges, as Markus already as well pointed out, the currency stuff, the digital euro things, and I followed closely the developments which are coming up. However, I'm really quite positive at the moment, since we see a lot of very, very interesting developments coming up. The main challenge, of course, beside the digital currency stuff, is definitely the scaling, the broad acceptance in industry, in governments, in the public. So here I think we have a long way in front of us to get really to a broad acceptance, to broad scaling. However, we not only start with POCs at the moment, we really do very interesting. I think that the more modern word then would be MVP, minimal viable products, that really when we talk to customers, to the big OEMs, they are quite interested in starting real smaller business and experimenting with it. And there we find out that some things are working, some things are not. And I would just one example from the technology side, what we are focusing at the moment mostly is really one thing, this agent technology that Maria just introduced as well, which we see as one of the most interesting software developments we need, so that devices can not only exchange data, but really do business to each other. This is one of my main favorite sayings, that we have in the future the economic things doing stuff to each other. And on the other side, when it's going about scaling, we need really broad examples. We need this technology that is working. And so therefore, we need lots of participants in these new upcoming ecosystems. Not only one, we will have ecosystems in the industry, in governments, and so on. And there I see one very interesting development at the moment when we come on for example, the developments in Gaia X, for example, where we try to find these new developments, data sovereignty networks or infrastructures in Europe that could help. And there we are really tracking a lot at the moment with politics stuff, with roadblocks and all that stuff, and we see how hard it is. However, I see a development here, and we are strongly behind it, pushing that forward into this development. But again, to make it short, it's starting right now, and I see it like in 3 to 5 years max that we really have a scalable first interesting network working.
Okay, and typically we have in mind the autonomous car driving around, right? That's companies like Daimler, Tesla, of course, and others. But I'm pretty sure there is much more than just cars driving around. I typically have in mind car sharing, Drive Now from earlier times, and so on, Car2Go, these companies. But maybe you can span up the field a little bit and tell us what other domains in the mobility area are concerned here, about logistics, for example, also trains, bicycles, and so on. It should be much more. Therefore, what is your vision here, like despite autonomous cars?
Yeah, let me start here, because this is one of the most pressing questions for us, definitely. I don't want to talk too much about autonomous cars and autonomous driving, because this might be really decades away to have this real autonomous traffic going and working. What I see more and more getting important is really this new mobility model scenario, or multimodal mobility scenarios, where we have lots of other components. And so what is happening already now is the cars are talking to each other, making already business or having the possibility to do that. So with a driver in it, but using more and more intelligent and smart technology in a smart city, in the traffic, in the edge computing stuff. And so this is happening already. And so we look at business models already with when it comes to where to park, how to park. There we have very interesting new models in front of us. However, how to charge, electromobility is the big thing. And here will happen a lot because we have to. And we see that with our customers. They have big pressing issues here as well. And so this is already starting. And again, as I said in the beginning, if we make it to scale that and get more and more participants in this ecosystem, then these use cases will work quite fast, I guess.
Okay. Who else wants to basically enrich the vision a little bit?
Yeah, there's also maybe some adjacent kind of, services and use cases which can be implemented. I mean, surely you have got like carpools, ride sharing, scooter sharing, or pop-up buses. I mean, there's a lot of things. But there's also the things that when you have all these kind of, you can maybe call it an economic agent, like Maria mentioned. They can interact with, and they can also make money somehow. No? They can sell data. They can trade flexibilities with grid providers, because I mean there's a lot of in the energy market there's a lot of things happening, because like we're now using like wind energy, we're using solar energy, so there are more peaks in the grid, and now you have some possibilities with a mobile asset. They have batteries, and they have capacity, and they can start, if they're not used, say at night time, they can start, they can charge, or they can also start trading, making money in energy grids. So this is also, I think, really interesting use case. Maybe there's also a little bit more in the future, but we know from projects that other companies are working on that, and I think it really fits into that. Okay,
and last point by Maria, please.
No, I was going to add to that. Absolutely, there are going to be new business models that we haven't even thought about yet. But there are, very smart people out there who will take these technologies, and they will not wait for us to make an approval. They will just take them and use them. So our technology is open source. Anybody can, start looking at it and using it for their own use case. So. Peter mentioned one very important thing. So we want to have electric cars, electric vehicles, because we want to, protect the environment and so on. Now, that's a rather challenging to charge them. That's quite a challenge. And with Peter, we actually participated in this Tour de Europe last year, where we had electric vehicle, and it was driving across Europe.
That was fun.
That was really good. Yes, absolutely. And so we basically, what we try to do is have agents optimize these interactions with the charging stations, because you cannot just arrive at the charging station and expect. None of them were free. So what you really need is a system that is able to optimize the usage of these charging stations, that can book you in advance. It can maybe take you, a few kilometers away to charge at the one that's open you didn't know about, right? So there's really a lot of optimization that can be done. There are a lot of unused assets. There are a lot of overused assets. And so if we're able to balance the system better using, the AI capabilities and just having a good visibility of really what's in the ecosystem, what everything is there, because that's currently not happening. There are so many silos. Everybody is sort of having their own platform, their own product, So if we can open this up and let these entities interact together and find each other, first of all, interact, I think we're going to see much bigger improvement in economies, in optimization, and really decrease our costs, decrease the CO2 emissions, and so on.
Let me quickly add one thing here, because Maria, you said it before. Again, the thing with these platforms, and I think this is very important when it comes to electromobility, because here we already see too much platforms, too much smaller upcoming platforms, not to talk about these zillions of apps which are coming up, trying to do something in the electromobility phase. And there we see now the chance to have with these distributed systems and the agent technologies to have one point in interoperability of all these maybe working platforms, but it maybe has one mega independent distributed platform which is just working and which you can use in every city and on the countryside and everywhere. When we make it and when we finally have one working infrastructure in the distributed field here, and this really allows us then to have some success really in the electromobility phase. Just to sum that up.
I think, Peter, that's a very interesting point. I just thought about the following comparison. We are doing cash transfers now since years. Then the first online banking applications came up. Some of you guys might in Germany at least remember BTX and Batex J at that time. You know, that's really a long time ago. And then we had nicer online banking solutions. Some banks are still stuck there, you know, that's browser-based. Now we have N26 in Germany and others who are really streamlining the online experience. And then suddenly the following thing happened, exactly what Peter said. Suddenly we had our iPhone and we had like 8 online banking apps, right? So basically 8 silos, 8 online banking apps, and it really got confusing. We onboarded to another bank and to another bank, and suddenly, same with me, I have no clue where my money is. You know, some is on N26, some is on my MLP bank, some is elsewhere. So I have no clue about what is like the summary of what my expenses are per month and so on. And then the government basically took action here. That's interesting to note because the government created basically the, what is it called? The PSD2 regulation, exactly to exchange data in the area of finance, such that now aggregator apps are possible. We have one app aggregating multiple bank accounts, right? And with this, traditional banks are basically pushed one step back to the value chain, and the face to the customer has been created for these aggregation apps, right? That has been done, by the way, without blockchain technology, but it's an interesting movement from silos to, let's call it chaos, right? To thousands of apps, and then to an aggregation app. Aggregation just works with standardization. Standardization requires interoperability, and this basically, in the case of finance, has been enforced by the government, right? Do you see, is finance here basically, let's call it a front-running industry for mobility, or is this basically an entirely crazy thought? And how could we achieve interoperability? Because as you all know, blockchain networks can basically act as an operation system for mobility, right? But who is basically creating this kind of standardization? In finance, it was now the government a couple of years ago who could do it in the mobility area, because of course, Bosch would like to create and set its own standardization. Daimler would like to do it. BMW would like to do it. With the goal that basically the largest standard is at some point of time getting the largest market share. So how to break this logic? Any ideas?
Just to answer it quickly, that's one thing what's sure for us. We don't, we won't create our own proprietary platform or standard or anything like that, because you can't. In this, because I'm the absolute fan now of distributed ledger technologies, because nobody can do it alone. So we need a complete industry coming together, which is a huge endeavor, definitely. However, lots of all the independent software developers, all the coders, all the smaller companies can take part here as well. All the very agile and very important startups can help us here to build up this ecosystem so everyone can take part. And so you have these consensus protocols which allow you to have fair markets again in the future. And you do not have this one big, you all know maybe already from my postings and all that I'm not really the big fan of these GAFAs out there. Yeah, all these huge companies who collect all the data on their servers and say, trust us, we have the security, we have working systems and so on. I don't want to trust them in the future with all this upcoming new data and new stuff. So I'm absolutely trusting now these new upcoming standards. For example, when it comes to digital identity, yeah, we see what the World Wide Web Consortium is standardizing at the moment with these SSI standards and all that. We come here to international, globally available standards, which no company is owning and is controlling. And this might be really one of the solutions. However, again, when we start small and slowly to embrace the first working business models and use cases, more and more coming up and joining these fields. Of course, we have all these classical centralistic systems. However, we strive for some kind of a hybrid model as well. And looking how these independent, open, these diversified, decentralized systems are working, and they are growing. And this is my absolutely impression here. And this is decentralized systems will be the key in the future here.
That's an interesting point. Who would like to add something on this? And by the way, Peter, you know, of course, there is your boss, and there is the boss of your boss, and up the hierarchy. The point is also, I think that people upwards in the hierarchy, let's call it the senior management, they mostly have not understood blockchain yet. So it will be difficult to drive this change. That's my personal opinion, unless people in higher hierarchies or senior management are understanding this, because they will provide the budget and the strategic direction. Would you agree on this, Peter?
A very good message here from my side is just I could convince most of the top managers in my company already. Okay. So really, mostly of them understand the need here and understand really what DLT, and mostly of them really have a glimpse of understanding what DLT could mean. Yeah, okay. So this is really very interesting, and now we are working to convince as well our peers in the other companies. So we're quite on a good way.
Markus, you would like to add something from experiences you had in your project?
Yeah, I mean, standardization is always like a kind of challenging topic, because you have to get a lot of people, say, on the same desk, and it can take years. I mean, you see it like also with, we have ISO, and you have a lot of standards in the world, and from my experience, also like other projects, not in blockchain space, it takes a really long time to develop a standard. But normally, I think also like governments step in and building like standards. So this is kind of really normal. And but we have to do that because if you have an ecosystem and you have these agents and you want to interact with that, and it's not really nice if you have 3 different versions of the same thing. You know, you want to have one version, you want to have one standard. But my take on that is like, okay, there must be some going in the initiative, and you have to get a lot of people, say, on a desk, and it can take time, but something will just get out. I've seen a lot of standards in the industry, and especially in technology, and often they are just pushed by the open community, and something comes out, but it takes time. But it's absolutely necessary.
My feeling is that in the finance industry, the associations are playing a quite important role, like associations bring together the industry participants. But I'm not sure if, but in the finance area, due to regulation, it might be that the association have basically a little bit more power or influence in comparison to associations in the mobility area or also the machinery area. But that's not just speculation. Okay, what's the biggest hurdles for future projects, and what are the biggest hurdles out there for more adoption? You know, is it, as I would expect, maybe understanding with senior management? Is it maybe also regulation? Is it sometimes the digital programmable euro missing on the networks to really streamline also the payment on these networks? So what would you say are the key hurdles, key limitations out there which are preventing us from being faster, speedier, and so on?
I see 3 things there. I mean, the first thing is more like on a level to get consortia together. I mean, I have lived through that like 2 times in my life, and it's really a big pain to get people on a table and to agree on something, because I mean, with blockchain is a complete paradigm shift, because we say, okay, we're going away from building a service, say, around a silo. You know, I own all the data, I have all my process, I have my back office process, to going into kind of what Peter called like this kind of ecosystems. You know, we have all these different players, and they have to, I mean, they're not kind of competing with each other. I mean, but they should work together. And this is a big paradigm shift. I mean, I see it happening now in the industry, but I think it's a painful process. And I say last year I was on an industry project and sitting together with these people, and I saw that it takes time, because I mean, for younger, say, startups, it's much easier to do that. But say for incumbent company, it's a little bit more complicated, because they have already established processes, and now they have to put some processes in in blockchain protocols, and some stay in a company, so they have to share something. So this is one thing. I mean, the other challenge is definitely on the technical side, what I mentioned earlier, that the technology is not mature yet, and not scalable. I mean, there's some scalable solutions, but if you want to grow really big, it must be super scalable. And the third thing, as I already mentioned, Philipp, is a digital euro. You need something. You need a stable payment on such systems, and you should maybe have also something like micro payments and all these things. So this is my take on that.
Excellent. Who else wants to add something on the hurdles? Maybe also concerning the regulatory part.
If I may add, I fully agree with Markus, what he said. In my opinion, it's such a cultural change what we're seeing, you know, with blockchain and decentralization. I think people still don't quite understand what that means. There's Fetch is also part of Blockchain for Europe association. We're a trade association based in Brussels, and our aim is to help regulators and policymakers to understand, the blockchain technology, what's going on, the use cases, and try to, have a dialogue with them. So the regulations are open, they're, inclusive, they're not prohibiting one or another technology. What we see is that there is such a need for education. So, us here, we understand what blockchain is, we understand these use cases, but I think we're such a small minority that to me, it's more of a cultural change than a technological change. Right. So yes, technology still needs to develop. We need to build interoperability because there are all these different blockchains. There are, many different things, and standards will come later because, you don't want to impose standards when you're just developing. The technology is in development. So there's no doubt about that. But I think what we need to really is to be able to convince more people that this is here, it's happening. Show them the benefits, and again, for me, it's more of a cultural change than anything else. To convince large corporations like Bosch, like you mentioned, Philipp, earlier. The top management needs to be on board, but they need to understand it, right? The regulators need to understand it, so they're not afraid of these new things. So I think there are, these are some of the key steps or key, things that we need to overcome going forward if we want to be successful in a faster adaptation of this technology. I think it will come. There's no stopping it, but I think the question is how soon. And you mentioned digital euro. This is one of the key things as well. You want a stable currency that you can transact with, and yes, and China is already doing their trials. Europe needs to really start doing and looking at this as well.
Excellent.
I just want to differentiate here two levels. What I'm seeing here, because we talk a lot on the enterprise side with all the top players on the other of our customers and the other industry players. And there we have this education stuff as well. They do not really understand yet what distributed systems mean. And so we are working on it, I would say. But I'm quite positive here. But the other level, which is might be much more a challenge, is the public opinion here. Because how do we convince the public audiences out there to not always put all their data and all their trust, if there is any, to the different centralistic monopolistic platforms? Because when you look at the social media, that's okay. Yeah, if you definitely want to tell the whole world how your breakfast was and how your dog is doing or your cats, that's fine. However, when you look into the future in the IoT, where all your data is stored somewhere, where all your health data, all your financial records, or anything what is consisting of your life today in an analog way, you will have in the future in digital. How to convince now the public to look a little bit more about their real data and who is earning money with it and what is happening with this money. We have this one interesting glimpse of what could happen if the public understands what decentralization maybe mean with the Corona app that we had. Not to say what it's doing now. However, when we started seeing how it is developing, a lot of the users were really afraid what is happening with my data, and that's what they are still today. And so when the first word come up with, hey, it's decentralized, we have it not on one server, we have on lots of servers. The public opinion there was, oh, okay, so no, that could work. However, not talking about the realistic thing, how is it the situation, how it is now. However, if we really come out and convince the public or educate the public opinion in more terms of what is really defining trust, what is happening with your data, how important is your data to you, and what kind of technologies are out there to help you, and really help them to understand and work on their fears here a little bit more, then that could work definitely in the right direction.
Wow. That's a super interesting point, Peter, because like, I mean, if you want to convince the public, I would say simply like, okay, give some incentives. Like, I mean, at the moment, I mean, I see it also like with a lot of, say, also colleagues and people I know, they don't care much about the data. But if you attach, say, a value to it and you give them an incentive if they could sell it, I mean, probably, say, public opinion will change a little bit. I mean, I think this would be possible. Like, say, if you have a travel, if you have a ride somewhere, and you're collecting data, and this is essentially super valuable data to many companies. And if you say, okay, there's a possibility that you have microtransaction and you sell it, people will see, okay, data is valuable. At the moment, I mean, you put everything on Facebook. I don't know, they make $2,000 with your data each year. Yeah. If people would pocket it, I mean, they would be happy and they would say, okay, oh, there is some value. But at the moment, they think it's like, okay, like nothing. No, it's thin air.
Exactly, and you do not have any hope that you can change that at the moment, because as well the governments are struggling really to regulate that stuff. Some hope here is coming up already in Europe, that they say, hey, Google, what you are doing, or Facebook, what you are doing is not really the good thing that we want to have in the future. They try now to come up with some other new programs to maybe regulate, or regulate is not the best word for that. Control it a little bit more, what the big ones are doing, and how we can go in a more hopeful way of really decentralized data platforms, and really understanding what is the real value of data, and understand what the end user can do with its data, and how valuable is it for him. But at the past, we didn't have the technologies to do that. So the big ones, the big techs, were there and gave us the technology, and that's cool, and we will live with it. We need the clouds, we need all that stuff. However, when it comes more and more to the trust and to the value, we need more, and we need this decentralized technology again.
I think actually this is all right. I think the societies, politicians, institutions, they first have to learn the right balance with regard to decentralized systems. They are all known to centralized systems, of course. You know, this is how the world has been built the last decades. But you see very nicely indeed with the Corona app, because you have like a much more efficient system in case you are disregarding data protection and you're just doing it decentralized. But of course, then people are having like the fear that their data is misused. Okay. Then you apply data protection, and then it's so decentralized that it doesn't work. Right, and therefore it's not easy to balance this nicely between decentralization and centralization. I think there is no way to have like 100% either or. It's always a mixture, and to really balance this, and this should also apply to mobility. To really balance this is not an easy task, because you have to have the regulator here, and with this you always have a centralized element here through the regulator, who is like controlling the gateways to systems. That can be the financial market, that can be mobility, that's the health system, and so on. And with this, it's not easy to really balance such systems. And this, by the way, in my mind, makes it extremely tedious and extremely slow, because these discussions, you know, what do you want to have from a governance level? How decentralized should it be, and so on? These takes months or even years to really balance them out. So therefore, I would expect at this point of time that the most promising products and services are where you to some degree have closed systems. Yeah, that could be autonomous agents on the area of a manufacturing plant. You know, you also have like 5,000 agents there on a manufacturing plant, but then you have an control systems and can do whatever you want there with a minimum of regulatory interference, so to say. Would this make sense? Because actually I like and share Maria's vision about the traffic lights. It's fascinating, but until we have this, it will take, I would expect, at least 10 years.
So let me just add this, Maria, sorry, because this is one very interesting point that we see at the moment in the industry happening. Absolute underline what you just said with the closed system. So this is the same discussion we had with the private and public blockchains, which are more secure, which are more scalable. And industry-wise, supply chain, there you absolutely are right, because then it's working. We have closed, semi-closed systems here, and this is working quite good in the industry. And all these smaller ecosystems are working quite nicely already. And again, on the other side, when you come to the public, there you have these broad open systems, and this is much heavier or more difficult to control or to make scalable. However, here this can work. Just one practical example, what we are, and I think Maria already talked about it as well, in the parking situations. When we offer a parallel system to all these already existing central platforms for parking, and we say, hey, now you can do some kind of a seamless parking experience, or a deep parking, as we call it sometimes, so that you can go drive with your car in a city and use parking places which you never have expected to find because they were not there. There are no official parking places. And we are experimenting with that. We have a running product already there, which helps you find these parking places and really transact broker with that parking place to park there for a few hours or so, pay digitally, be, of course, authenticated and authorized to do so with digital identity and all this. And here it helps. And if these systems come up or in parallel, the end user will decide what is better for him, what he would like. Use the central platforms in the city when they are still there and available, but use the other stuff which are coming up more and more if they do not have these opportunities or too expensive or too crowded or anything like that. So this would be as well one interesting approach to let this come up in parallel and work on these models.
If I may add to that, this is absolutely one of the key points, and it's possible. So to implement these technologies, it's possible to do that in parallel, and then you're able to experience, the benefits. And I think if we give these benefits to the users, where they can either monetize their data, or they can, share their parking space, because let's say they're in a building and they need to travel to work in a different building, but they have a parking space open and they can sell it to somebody for a day or just for a few hours. They will drive, that will drive the adoption. Nobody was asking Airbnb when they started. Nobody was looking, is this viable? They just gave users something that was really interesting, was easy to use, and brought them benefits. So I think if we can achieve that, give users the choice, and they will make the decisions. But I also agree with you, Philip, what you said. It's a combination of private and public, and we see that as that was a really good example. We're working on something similar as well, where you. With the agents as well. The agents are, they're flexible, and we are working with the University of Cambridge, and they have been building these models and agents infrastructures for 20 years. So they have been working with the industry. Boeing, they had one, I can talk about it because it was like in 2008. So there has been a lot of research done, and you can see that the ideal, it always depends on a specific situation, but what we will end up with is private systems where and we will have public systems. So for example, my house, I will have an energy agent that represents my house, because it doesn't make sense to have energy agents on each of the lights negotiating with the energy provider. So you will have sort of like a manager agents that represent either factories or large organizations or fleet of cars, right? And then they will, so that will be a private system, but then they will want to operate and can communicate in a public way with the other parts of the ecosystem.
Yes, I perfectly agree. So this interconnectedness is fascinating, but it also, in my mind, slows things a little bit down. But that has been very, very interesting aspects here. So let's, in the last minutes, also talk a little bit. I will also check the WhatsApp channel in a second. Let's talk about the bridging the software and the hardware part, because, of course, you only get like true IT security when you're able to basically combine software and hardware very nicely, such that you cannot break it, right? So how can this be achieved? Is it, by the way, possible, or who is working on these fields? I think maybe Marcus, you can add something on this question.
Yeah, this is one of the really tough question, because like you have to connect, say, the digital world with the physical world, and this means this the example from Maria just brilliantly with say the traffic lights. You have a traffic light somewhere, and the traffic light has a lot of kind of say real-time data, and somehow also should be controlled. So you have this physical object, and this physical object has maybe some sensors or has some connections, and then you have the digital world. So it might be a distributed ledger or any other technology. And if you want to use this data somewhere, it should be kind of trusted. It should be verifiable. So this means something like you can use cryptography and you can sign it, but you also have to do something on the side of your physical object or on your traffic light. So it should have like an ID, and then the question is, okay, how to get an ID? So there's these kind of technologies like decentralized ID, where you can distribute an ID, and it can generate say the private key into a special kind of a hardware security model. So like some kind of crypto chip maybe is like on your device, and with this it can have an identity, and it can sign all data it produces. But the other problem is like often it has special sensors, and from the sensors you're computing something what you need actually. Some kind of, say, like a velocity or something, and you want to put it into the system, then you also need like a kind of trusted execution environment. So there's a lot of kind of hardware stuff you have to do around and cryptographically link your physical object, might be a car, with a blockchain. So this is really a challenge, and there's a lot of companies working on that. But it has to be done, and I think it's really essential, because I mean, we're speaking about trust, and we have DLT to have like digital trust, but we also in the same way we want to have data flowing in, and we want to connect physical objects. So we have to solve this kind of solve this problem.
I perfectly agree. I think this question is also perfect for Bosch. Peter, are you working at exactly such sensors, or maybe are you equipping sensors already with the required software modules or update functionality to basically make them part of blockchain networks in the future? Is this already part of your products, or
absolutely
is it something for the future?
This is really my absolutely home turf here, because we are on the edge of new development of a new area in automotive at the moment, because we are exchanging more and more of the components in the car with computers, real computers. So in the past we had lots of controllers, microcontrollers. Now we come in the area of microcomputers. So we have vehicle computers in the car, much more power, much more efficiency, and room and space and all that computing power. And so this is really maybe as well the tipping point here that we need. So to anchor the trust mechanisms, the software in hardware. And we talk about high security modules, for example, which do all already now the classical cryptography stuff, the public key infrastructures, which you see normally in the classic IT world, which is coming now into the car. And if we have this done or do this with decentralized system, we earn lots of additional trust and security. Just a small example: when you really do vehicle to infrastructure models, what you really need is ground truth. So that means you have to trust the information which is coming in, and of course what data is leaving the car maybe comes back with other answers and other interesting choices for the car to make or anything to do, and you absolutely have to trust that data. Is it trustworthy? Is the car still safe with this new data? And we currently work on interesting new ideas of feature update mechanisms. So we all know from the examples from Tesla, for example, that some of the software over the air stuff went horribly wrong because the car did stuff which it should normally not do. And so we have huge regulations coming up, which tell us if anything is entering the car data-wise, software, feature, firmware-wise, then we need to have a documentation process which is absolutely proof and waterproof. We have to have trust mechanisms that the car is really safe as it was before. And this is going to work definitely with like these SSI mechanisms, what I said in the beginning. We are experimenting at the moment with that. anchoring that stuff, the digital ID in a car, in real hardware, and combining that with these agents, with this software, which are communicating with others, but having real ground truth from the hardware, from the car, which is not hackable anymore, maybe in the future, not yet, maybe. However, this maybe is then one of the possible solutions we are working with it. Really understanding which data goes out of the car. When any data comes into the car, be absolutely sure that data, that software, that agent, feature update or anything like that is exactly for that car in that composition, in that time, in that location.
Well,
and this is really where decentralized systems help us.
Absolutely, this is blockchain at its best. Absolutely, but it's still up to the future. It's interesting what you're saying, because what you are mentioning is, in my personal opinion, that it's not mobility what is regulated. So in case we would ask now mobility lawyers to make proposals, that does make sense. I think it's basically more related to IoT regulation, data regulation, identity regulation, and so on. But it's not necessarily mobility regulation. This might
It's IoT, definitely.
And what we see here in my mind is that these traditional silos are being broken up. It's not logistics and mobility and manufacturing. I think these ecosystems will be called differently in the future, and the key drivers will here data protection, data monetization, identity, and so on, which are cross-sectional to all these existing legacy domains, let's call it that way. Okay, I think we are close to be finished. Who wants to bring about maybe a key message to the audience? What should we do more? What should we do less? Should we deal more with software? That's DLT. Should we deal more with hardware? What would be your recommendation?
I think software and hardware is something which is pretty much in progress. But I want to stress a point which also Maria mentioned. I mean, this is this cultural change we have to think about. Like this, okay, we have to work together, and we shouldn't hide ourselves in our silos, and we have to build this ecosystem. I think the cultural thing is the most important thing we have to tackle. I think hardware we will get, and software will get either. I mean, this will be the big challenges.
Okay, excellent. Who else wants to?
If I may say, thank you, Marcus. I like I said before, I fully agree with this. I think we need to be open-minded. I think we have technology that will change how we live in the future, how we communicate, how we transact. I think we need to accept that and just be open-minded and help to educate others that are not aware of these new developments, and help them understand that. And I think that will bring a lot of benefits to all of us.
And since we almost are in Christmas time, so I have a big wish. We have to increase definitely the awareness in the public opinion. What is my data doing on these Facebook, Google, Apple platforms? So really, you all here in the call need to help us here to educate your peers, the public opinion, what is happening to us with these central platforms, what is really their benefit. On the other side, what maybe is in danger in the future. So really try to understand what decentralized system could help here, where not maybe as well. However, what are we doing daily with our Facebook and Twitter and all the other accounts? I'm learning here every day as well and trying to do that still. However, we use these platforms. These are very important, definitely. However, how we gonna use them and how we understand what they are really doing, that's important. That would be a great wish that we should do.
I think that was a very, very nice closing work. Thank you much to all of you. Anybody else want to say something? Otherwise, I would propose we are closing this round. It was very interesting. I also learned a lot. That's why I actually like doing these moderation tasks, because then you can ask whatever you are interested in, and then you can also learn a lot. There haven't been much questions in the WhatsApp channel today, but I still found it was a very, very interesting session this morning. Thanks very much, and I would say then have a nice day, and already now having a nice weekend later on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great Friday.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Bye bye.